Well, welcome to our conversation with Pat O'Brien, Professor Emeritus in Financial Accounting and longtime colleague at the School of Accounting and Finance. During her time here, she's helped to shape the research environment, particularly through her involvement in the PhD program as a teacher, program director, grad officer, and PhD student supervisor.
So, may I ask you to share your stories about what motivated you to dive into this amazing academic career, and how did you feel in your early days of conducting accounting research?
My math advisor at Cornell had encouraged me to think about a PhD, and I thought, no, PhDs end up driving taxis and not, and living kind of hand to mouth, and I didn't think that was the thing for me. I went off to get an MBA thinking, okay, well, I need to make money, and so I better get an MBA. In the course of which, I realized that the things that were interesting to me were being taught in PhD courses, and the things that I was taking in my MBA classes, the jobs I was interviewing as an MBA student, and the opportunities that were available to me with an MBA were things that I thought would probably be interesting or fun for about 6 months or so, and then I would be bored out of my skull. And so I, had professors there who were encouraging me in my ideas about perhaps pursuing a PhD. I saw that, it seemed like a viable option. And although it wasn't math, I could, still keep learning. So it was the opportunity to remain a student for the rest of my life, really, that was the appealing thing and caused me to go into academics. One of the things that I particularly learned is that whoever wrote the policy for the University of Waterloo did a good job of emphasizing in there that the quality of the research should always dominate over quantity of research. And although discussions would sometimes veer into, well, there aren't that many publications, or I would have expected by this time a second book or something like that, that policy allowed the conversation to be steered back to, that is not the point. The point is the quality of the research. And so I think when schools or departments put in these, you need to have this many top tier articles as their own internal standard, they do a great disservice, because what that motivates in young scholars is, I need to churn out articles, not I need to work on really interesting things. And it's a downward spiral, right? To what's the minimum I have to do to get into one of these journals, instead of how can I answer this really interesting question? How can I best answer it? And I think there is a need to have your research addressing interesting questions and not chasing small minutiae that are truly of interest only to a small group of academics. But we're going to need some of that research that's of interest only to the small group of academics as a piece of advancing the whole project. So I think it's, thinking about increments to knowledge and conveying research as the conveying research to people not academics who are interested in these practical applications, conveying the accumulation of increments to them in pieces that they can get. Those are two different skills, and not everybody's going to have expertise in both of those skill sets in their hands. But we as an academic community, I think, have those skills, and we as an academic community can make that case that yeah, we do work on research that's relevant to practice. You kind of have to follow a trail of increments to get to the answers that you want. You have to know how to read the research. And that's what getting a PhD is all about, I suppose.
We have a great group of PhD students here with us now, and hopefully more to come in the years ahead. And so I wondered if you could, given your experiences as an editor, referee, and just as a massive contributor to our profession over the years, if you could offer some words of advice to our incoming PhD students, our upper year PhD students, and our PhD students who are about to embark upon their first faculty position.
I think that somehow in our education process, we overemphasize the critique part of evaluating research and maybe underemphasize the appreciating the value in a paper or an idea. In other words, we encourage our students to find fault with the things that they're reading as a way of understanding the research process and so forth. And I think we do a less good job. This is all very impressionistic, but this is the impression that I've gained, a less good job of having them understand this is the outcome of somebody's careful thinking about a problem in which they had to make a lot of trade-offs, some of which, may have been, choosing the less bad of two bad alternatives or two non-ideal alternatives. So instead of asking them to find the faults in papers, I wish that we could instead help them to understand a sort of a building process of what this paper brings in terms of some new insight or some new contribution. And yes, it's not perfect, but it is a step. And it's a valuable step for whatever reason. This is something that in the course of looking at, especially, I guess it's a commonplace for people to remark that if you want a really harsh review of a paper, you send it to a junior referee, because they're going to write, everything's wrong, everything needs to be fixed, and no, there's no contribution here. And so maybe this is something that can only be learned after you've produced a few papers yourself, a bunch of papers yourself, to know about all those hard decisions that had to be made that maybe weren't made in an ideal fashion, but you did the best you could with what you had. So this sort of thinking, I don't know if I can summarize it with, be generous or be kind when you are evaluating the work of other people. That said, don't expect it from the other side, because I don't think that we're going to say we're going to change the world in this one conversation. So.
Okay, thank you.